too soon that I wore this, Jorge? I can't help myself. It's got all my favorite colors in it. Hey, it's me, Wilma Fingerdoo, with the Fingerdoo review of RuPaul's Drag Race Special Report. COVID, you can't keep a good queen down. Now, before we get started, I would like to send a little thank you out to my tipperdoo's. First of all, Belinda Novotny, she sent me a note with her tipperdoo. Thanks, Belinda doll. You're a sweetheart and very generous. Norman McFall, hello, gorgeous yourself, Norman. Alejandro BT sent me un beso with his tip. Right back at you, Alejandro. Mwah. And Vivian Bourdonnais left a note too. Now, you're very welcome, Vivi. I hope you don't mind if I call you Vivian, because I'm gonna. And finally, a big thank you to Joe Van Patten. Good to hear from you, Joe. It's been a while. I hope you're keeping yourself out of trouble. Now, of course, we can't have a review until we wet our whistle. So, Jorge, drink me. Ooh. What is that? Coke Zero and tequila? Oh. Apparently we stocked up on tequila, is all I'm saying. Ooh, it's delish. Olé. Now, on to this review. I wanted to review this special because I think it's important to remember that this pandemic has affected everything and everyone. This look at how people are trying to live their lives during one of the hardest times the planet's faced has to be one of the most impressive examples of the human race's tenacity. Not only to see a production company continue to create entertainment for the masses, but to keep the members of the entertainment community employed in a time where entertainment is the first luxury to get hit hard. And I'm not just talking about performers. There are crew members all across the world not working. And because nothing's being filmed or productions are getting shut down, it's been very difficult for these people right across the board. I know firsthand that my production team on Knock Knock Ghost, we have less than 20 people on the crew, including the cast, and there's never more than 8 of us on set at a time. So it was very, very easy for us to adhere to safety protocols. But this season of Drag Race started with 13 queens, not to mention the on-set crew, which is usually double that. And I'm just talking on-set. That doesn't include the office and all of the support crew outside. Also, working around that many people, whether you've been quarantined or not, makes health precautions difficult at the best of times. My only complaint about this special was there wasn't more of a focus on the crew that's making all this happen, but maybe that's just me. Something else that bothered me about this special was the lipstick. Like 5 or 6 of them all seem to have the same orange lipstick on, and the thing that bothered me right away is that no queen would wear that lipstick. There's no reason a drag queen out or in drag would ever put that color on. It didn't look good on anybody. And second of all, why do they have to use that one lipstick? Was there some reason they couldn't bring their own makeup in? They had to use whatever was there? I mean, because the thing we have to remember about this special, it was filmed during the filming. There was no break like the UK. People didn't stop filming and go home. This special was filmed while they were filming. So there had to be some reason that they all had to use that lipstick. It bothered me. The other thing that bothered me, and this is just how different the American production is from the British production. Not that the British production's COVID special was filmed the same way. Because the British one was done as people were going home, it was done a lot on phones and at home, like Zoom call stuff. So less production value. But because there was more production value in the American one, there were some shots, like there was a shot of Gottmik leaning back, looking all sexy and gorgeous, and it was a beautiful photo. He looked fantastic, but was that the appropriate shot to have as a transitional shot to his interviews segment or something? It just kind of, it took me out of it. Do you know what I mean? It kind of made me kind of go, well, what am I watching? Just me? As for the queens themselves, as performers who rely on a live audience for more than tips, it was interesting to see how they kept the home fires burning with things like digital performances. One thing that's not as prevalent with the American queens to me as with the British queens is merchandise. Although a few of them have things to buy. Tamisha had those sneakers that look gorgeous. I wish they'd been in my size, all I'm saying. And Candy had her arrogant necklaces for sale. The British queens seem to have t-shirts and pins ready to go day one premiere of season 2. Speaking of Tamisha Iman, her story about dealing with COVID while her immunity was compromised because of her fight with cancer was eye-opening. First of all, I forgot about that added concern of her immune system being weakened by chemo and all that. No wonder she was washing everything at home that was coming in the door. I totally get that level of concern. I must admit, I wash my hands way more than I'm used to. I don't mind telling you, I had to buy lotion because my hands were getting chapped. I know, the struggle is real. I'm just glad that Tamisha had her partner there for support. That has to be the hardest situation, is anybody who's going through this alone. I said alone! Kimura's story about being Asian at this time was another one that broke my heart. I can't get over this growing animosity towards a race of people over something like this. It just doesn't make sense at all. Certainly not to take anger out on them. And the only thing I can really do is blame Trump. For him calling it the China flu, and that, it really set a whole significant percentage of North America's population. It's put them at risk. It's put them in harm's way unnecessarily. And people aren't picking on the ones that look like they could fight back. They're picking on old people and mothers and nanas. You know, it's absolutely unnecessary. It breaks my heart. And on behalf of angry white people everywhere, I just need to say I am so sorry it's happening, and I hope that it stops right quick. Just seeing Tamisha going around in a mask that said "I am not a disease" is very political, but it also made me cry, because it's got to be a lonely time. It has to be. I'm reminded of when 9/11 happened, and all of a sudden Middle Eastern people were just shunned, and you know, it's like, oh God, it's terrible. You can't blame everybody for something. And it breaks my heart when it's easy to do that, when you can separate the group because of race. Hopefully that's changing. Nothing was more chilling than Joey J stay at home alert while they were filming. I mean, if that doesn't punctuate the moment, The death of New York drag queen Mona Foote was another sobering moment in this documentary, because I hadn't heard of her. I didn't know anything about her. So I looked her up, and oh my God, like, what a cornerstone. And for her to just be so easily taken. She had a compromised immune system. She also worked out a lot. So she was at gyms, and New York at a time that it was under horrible leadership from its Oompa Loompa. Nothing was shut down. Like, it became a hotbed, and for her to be someone that's been lost because of this, it's a heartbreak. It's a heartbreak, and I'm glad that it scared a few of these queens into taking more precautions, because you can't play with something like this. I mean, I was surprised to hear about the queens who did contract COVID-19. I don't know anyone personally who's tested positive for it, but there was a huge outbreak at one of the drag bars here in Toronto back in the late fall. And I know that more than a few of the Canada's Drag Race queens contracted it as well. But from what I hear, everyone's back up to snuff. So, you know, knock on wood, bless the baby Jesus, whatever it takes. But still, it's not just because people are surviving it doesn't mean we shouldn't be taking precautions. The other queens, like, to hear that Olivia had gotten it, Candy had contracted it, but then so many of these queens also, I was so impressed with the fact that Olivia's mom is a nurse, Rose's boyfriend is a nurse, Utica's mom is a nurse. Like, there seem to be some good connections for some of these queens to medical information, if not assistance. Of course, like everyone, a lot of these queens were doing digital drag shows, but I think the only queen that really had any kind of notoriety really going into filming Drag Race, because keep in mind, these queens are doing digital drag shows for the audience they've built locally. And in a lot of cases, these queens aren't national names. You know, they might be known in a couple of cities that they've toured or go back and forth, but short of that, the level of attendance to an online digital performance wouldn't be the same as now because we've seen them on TV, except for Tina Burner. She actually went into Drag Race as the only verified queen on Twitter or Instagram or something. I read something where she was the only queen going in that kind of seemed to have not only a large presence on social media, but nationally. She's performed in a lot of cities, and I think that she's one of those types of queens that gets paid to come. They don't go and do the show and hope they tip it up, you know what I'm saying? But short of that, they were all doing digital shows, so I can't imagine what they were making on a digital show. But if they weren't making any money, period, it had to have helped. So for anyone who's ever attended a digital drag show, I know Misconception has a couple, they're a hoot. God bless you. If you can afford it, watch one of those shows and give them a tip. It goes a long way, trust me. I know the feeling of getting a tip. It is the best. So, but don't compromise yourself. We're all on a plane here. Put the air mask on yourself first is what I'm trying to say. Seriously. I think the only digital drag show that would have done well, regardless of level of fame, was Joey J in shorts and high heels. He can scream at whatever he wants. I'm going to watch that. And speaking of digital shows, the biggest digital show was yet to come, because while all this is going on for the season 13 queens, they're still airing season 12 and getting ready for their digital finale, which I have to say was so impressive. It was so innovative for them to try. I mean, the biggest disappointment, as we all know, was that. I'm just gonna say. Of course, the pandemic wasn't the only thing that was testing people's mettle. We had the murder of George Floyd and, of course, Breonna Taylor and all of those civil rights protests that went on. And, I have to say, I'm so proud that we haven't stopped talking about that. I think that here it is, a year later, it's still there. We can't stop talking about this, and I think because of things like Kimora talking about the Asian prejudice that's going on, we can't stop these conversations. And so the fact that we were already kind of fed up with what was going on, and then these murders took place, and George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, the two we're talking about, you know what I mean? It's a heartbreak, and I'm just so glad that while all of this is going on, and one of the worst presidencies in America's history, that these conversations have survived. Something that the queens touched on was preparing for Drag Race when stores aren't open. Fabric, makeup, wigs, don't get me started on wigs. There is a shortage of lace front wigs in the world right now. Why is that? Well, shipping restrictions. China stopped allowing shipping into the country. So, because almost all of these products are made in China, the manufacturers weren't able to get their supplies to continue production, and now no one can find a good lace front wig. Seriously, if you own a lace front wig, take care of it. It's all I'm saying. Take care of it for me. Kimora coming out as a proper drag queen to her parents was a pleasant surprise. Although they didn't understand it, they seemed to be very, very supportive of her decision to do it. Not all of us have great moms like Elliot, I'm just saying. Did you see her in the pink flamingos? My mom would totally wear that. I was really intrigued to see a lot of the behind-the-scenes stuff of them getting ready for shooting in the age of COVID. The set was enlarged, they had less rooms to go to, everything kind of happened in one space, but they were able to utilize it more and open the space up for shooting. I still question these movable plexiglass screens. Do you know what I mean? I don't know how, to me, I'm sure it does something, it can't do anything worse, but that just seems to be an added extra thing you have to deal with. It was also interesting to hear the queens talk about their exposure to the crew, how they only seem to deal with a couple, like one crew member kind of worked with this group, and then the queens never really saw them. They only saw that much of them, and to have worked with somebody so long and have really no idea, they could pass you on the street and you wouldn't know. That was interesting. The other thing I found interesting was them filming the confessionals with the tablets. That had to have been complicated. See, that also, I don't understand why they did that. Like, you don't have to sit right there to ask the questions. You could be back quite a way. And then the camera, once you've set the camera for focus, locked it off, the cameraman doesn't even need to be in the room. So it sounds to me like they took extra precautions for that as well. And as awkward as that was, I have to say, I was so super impressed that you could not tell. From a viewing point of view, I didn't realize that any of those things had gone on. It was interesting also, the queens being quarantined and also their downtime in between shooting, because normally during a Drag Race shooting, the queens are quarantined. But I think it became more poignant this year because there was a pandemic going on, and they were particularly feeling that lack of connection to friends and family. I also thought it was interesting how the queens talked about how chatty Ru was, how they felt they talked to Ru more. I have to say, off the hop, I kind of noticed it myself. I didn't mention it, but I kind of thought, well, Ru seems chatty, and then she had that high laughing fit with Candy I didn't understand. When it's all said and done, I'm very glad to hear how safe the queens felt while filming, especially after they finished filming and went home. I was horrified to hear that Tamisha had tested positive when she got home, but of course, super grateful to hear that she got through it unscathed. But that's a sobering reminder that no matter how you're feeling, you have to be cautious, you have to stay safe, and don't relax. Don't assume it's just not going to happen to you. I have to say I'm glad that this documented this season of Drag Race as well, because not only to film during this time, but to be one of the first shows of its kind to make the effort, I feel like this cast will always hold a special place in our hearts, because not only did we all go through this on our own, but we went through it together with these 13 queens and the dozens of people behind the scenes. They all helped to entertain us and distract us for a few minutes from the harsh reality that we're living through right now. So I certainly want to thank them for that. I'd also like to think that this will help the super fans who get so riled up defending the queens they like by vilifying anyone or anything that disagrees with them to be less angry and less aggressive in their support of their favorite queens. This pandemic is hard on all of us. We shouldn't be making it worse for individuals who are trying to entertain us. The attacks that queens like Candy and Ahura and Sister Sister have been facing is unacceptable. Death threats in the middle of the worst health crisis of the century is as bad as the pandemic itself. I hope this episode reminds us all that these queens are just human, and the people that are involved in the show just want to provide for their families and possibly make some good TV along the way. We're all in the same boat. No one's getting off at a different stop. Sure, some people have better views, but we need to remind ourselves we're human. We're lucky that we're here in the first place. Let's not make it worse for those who disagree with us. Seriously. I want to take this moment to thank RuPaul, the cast of season 13, and the crew. I think the fact that they made this season for us to watch, but also, I mean, let's not be crazy. They also were happy to be working, as Ru pointed out, in a time when not so many people are. So in a lot of ways, this season of Drag Race has been a godsend to us. I mean, certainly to be able to watch Drag Race at this time, what would we be doing otherwise? I love every single one of these girls that go onto this show, put themselves on the line, expose themselves to the public, and do what they're doing. And I really, really hope that people start to realize that they're just human, and to stop being angry because a show isn't going the way they'd like it to go. Please like this video if you did. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you didn't. And until next time, miss me. Mwah. Seriously. Do you like the bottom lashes? You know, Ellie Diamond has been such an inspiration to me for makeup, but I don't, they distract me. I see them out of the corner of my eye and I think something's going on. I remember I interviewed Bob the drag queen, don't trip on that name I dropped, and she had bottom lashes and upper lashes, and while I'm looking at her, it was like looking into a hair hole. So I feel kind of like that. I've created a hair hole for myself. But it's fun? No? Yes? I didn't put them on for you. So judgy.